This is the Kitchen Sink WP Podcast, episode 413.
I program my home computer.
We have a server crash. 404 error. Page not found. Links aren't working. System is crashing. System is crashing. System is crashing.
Your old HTML website. Barely alive. We have the technology. We have WordPress. A new website. Better than it was before. Better. Stronger. Faster.
Hello, everybody. This is Adam Silver, the host of the Kitchen Sink WP Podcast. Thanks for being here. Let's get started. All right, upcoming events. Something to tell you here, WP Career Summit. It's kind of a few months out. It's April 8th, 2022. It's being put on by Post Status, which is a group online. Registration's free, but the reason I mention it is they are looking for speakers, and it pays. There's a $200 stipend. They're looking for speakers who are particularly good at job hunting or knowledgeable about how to recruit and hire talent. So you'll do a 30-minute recorded presentation and possibly, and you would get a $200 stipend for participating. So that's kind of cool. I might throw my hat in the ring. I don't know. I mean, I've hired. I've let people go. People have quit on me. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So that is April 8th, 2022. But you can always go to wpcareersummit.com for more information about it. So there you go. All right, what else? That is it in the upcoming events. As I mentioned last week or the week before, WordCamp Birmingham has been postponed. Still no new date on that just yet. All right, moving on. Segment 1 in the news. WordPress 5.9 release candidate 3 is out. It's been out for just over a week. With that being said, tomorrow, the 25th, if I'm not mistaken, the new version 5.9 gets released. I believe that's the day of the release. So the day after this episode drops, 5.9 will be out. So there you go. So you have no time to test RC3 really, but 5.9 is due out this week. So check that out. Link in the show notes about that. And also sharing more goals. People have been sharing goals this year. For this month being in January, I wanted to call out that Courtney Robertson, who's been on this podcast, she shared a post over at make.wordpress.org about the training team goals for 2022. Really interesting read. Definitely link to it in the show notes. Check that out. She talked about the vision, the values, stakeholders, representation of stakeholders, methods and priorities for the team goals, obstacles, and then evaluation as well, milestones, etc. So really, it's a long, it's a good sized post. But definitely check that out as well. So that's cool. And lastly in the news, there was a backdoor vulnerability identified on 40 themes and 53 plugins, all belonging to the company behind AccessPress. I found this over on bleepingcomputer.com, and I will link to it in the show notes as well. Actually, looking at it right now, is it still there? There it is, yeah. I will link to that in the show notes. Yeah. So if you're running anything with AccessPress as far as their plugins or themes, you need to update that right away or reinstall WordPress core files as well, because it gives you a backdoor, etc. So some malware. It's kind of silly, but nonetheless, people have time to kill, so that's what they do. They write backdoor vulnerabilities into programs and stuff. So yeah, it's unfortunate. All right, moving on. Segment 2, the meat potatoes of this week's episode. Thoughts on the friends and family discount? Should you offer one? Because, it's a question about discounting your services and products and whatnot. And recently, I was pinged by a buddy of mine in a men's group that I'm in, asking for advice on websites about hosting and whatnot. His son is looking to start a new venture, and I'm always happy to offer my advice and my experience and my expertise, of course. But then, of course, to what end is the question, right? I mean, emails lead to a phone call leads to a coffee meeting, and perhaps that leads to paid work. Well, maybe. Or as the old saying in Hollywood goes, never work with kids or pets. Many in our industry say maybe don't work with friends and family. So a couple of things to talk about here are the pros and cons of offering the friends and family discounts. And it's a short list because I just want to get to the tips here at the end of it. Pros, when you're starting a company, it's an accelerated way to land new business, of course. Friends and family are going to be your first customers and supporters more than likely. A small discount is an essential way to reward that, to say thanks and help them help you, or that kind of thing, right? So that's a definite pro. It helps grow your business. You get some word of mouth, you get referrals from that ideally as well. But of course, that leads to cons because many people will expect that discount forever. and ever and ever and ever. And that may not work for you. Initially it may work, but then you have to eventually draw a line in the sand saying, hey, no more discounts for that type of product or service and really know what your pricing is. If you have a cost of goods sold, cost of goods, if you have hard costs, soft costs, etc. So there's pros and cons, and we can go into that in forever. I don't really want to go down that path right now. What I want to tell you is the tips for offering discounts for friends and family. Number one, I have about 4 here, with a little bonus. So the tips on offering these is this. Number one, be consistent and be, really consistent. Stick to it. 5%, 10%, whatever it is, don't waver and at all. Plain and simple. Okay. The second thing here is to document it, meaning send an invoice, add the discount. That way it shows the buyer the value of what they just got. Because what you don't want to have someone say is, let's say you're going to give someone a website for $500 because you're just starting out. And normally you charge $1,500 just as an easy number. If I do a website for $500 and that's what they tell their friends, that friend of theirs is going to think I do websites for $500. And I don't. I want them to know that I normally charge $1,500. And by chance, I'm knocking it down for them for $500 or 5% or 10%, whatever. Don't waver. And put it on that line item, friends and family discount. Okay. Third thing here is treat that person the same, meaning they are paying, so they are a customer. You add them to the queue and you process them as you would any other customer or client. Don't put them at the back of the queue, bottom of the list, wait too long and drag your feet because they're a friend or family. Treat them exactly the same as you would every client, because that way it gets done, it's professional, and it's clear. Okay. And then lastly, be clear on who is a friend and family. Otherwise, you're gonna enter that 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon game. If everyone's a friend and family, that's a problem. Then you're really not running the business the way you want to be running the business. You have value for what you do. You need to charge accordingly for it. And yes, you can offer discount and sales, but it needs to make total sense, once again, for your business. Now, that being said, lastly, there's, of course, the thought of why not doing it for free? And well, sometimes I actually agree with that. When you're starting out something, it makes a lot more sense at times just to do it for free. If it's really simple, whatever it is you do, if it's a one-page website, if they give you all the content, if they give you a quick little wireframe, if you do it for free, they have no recourse per se to ask for much else. Okay. Now, if you do a discount, if you're charging, $1,500, you offer 10% off, it's $150 off, it's not a big deal. But then there's going to be some back and forth, and you have to be careful about where that scope creep happens for what they're paying for. Again, you have to be very careful here. So sometimes, just sometimes, I believe it makes sense just to do something for free and be done. And that way, it's done, you've built some goodwill, and you move on. And recently, that's what I'm doing for this buddy of mine, son. For right now, it's free. I'm just building out a site. It's one page, and it's going to be done. And it took no time. They gave me what they liked. They gave me their content, and I'm done with it already. So there's that. I don't do it very often. I probably do it maybe. Honestly, this is the first time I've done this in over 2 or 3 years, I think. I don't think I've done one like this in a long time. And it's not my plan to do much more of these, honestly. It has to feel right, has to be right, and move on from that. So I'm curious, do you do a friends and family discount? If you do, how do you set it up? Percentages? Do you keep it going forever, etc.? So it's a topic that on the sales side of things can get people really riled up, as it does me sometimes. But again, I'm a firm believer of, be constant, be consistent on the pricing, document it, send an invoice, add the discount, so they see it. Treat them the same by any other customer as you would any other customer, and be clear on who is a friends and family. Obviously, your family is your family. Which friends get this discount? If you're going to offer it to one person in a group of men, potentially, like let's say you're in Kiwanis or Rotary, do you offer to everybody in that group? Maybe you do. 5% off for members of this association you're in. That could work just fine. But be clear who gets it as well. Otherwise, you're in the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. Okay, so there you go. My take on it. Love to hear yours as well. If you want to share, let me know. Moving on, segment 3, tip and tool of the week. This week's tip, it's a service called Xeroheight.com. I saw this, someone mentioned this to me recently. I think actually my friend Jen did. It's a service that lets you create a central hub for designers, engineers, products, and marketing teams. It's kind of like building a Docs central repository for graphics and content and logos and mobile and whatnot, colors and typography. There's a free level, paid level. I have no connection to them. That was kind of interesting, though. Yeah, there's free up to $50 per editor per month, plus, of course, enterprise levels as well. check it out. It's over at Xeroheight.com. Might be interesting to you. I don't know. Just thought it was kind of neat. I might check it out myself, and I might actually do a review, like a whole series of these types of services, and see how they really work in an agency workflow. We'll see. There it is over at Xeroheight.com. All right, that's it for this week. If you have any questions, go ahead, send it in via email, adam@KitchensinkWP.com, or use the speak pipe function of the website. If you want to support the show, I would love that. Become a Patreon over at KitchensinkWP.com/Patreon. You can sponsor the show. There's a form on the website. Thanks for listening. Go out and do some awesome things with WordPress. See you next week. All right, bye-bye.